Hey, what is up guys, and welcome back to another video. Now today, I wanted to talk to you about the new ultra portable laptop from Acer, the Acer Swift 5. And this thing is very small, it's very lightweight, and it comes in a very nice price to performance ratio. It's priced at around about £700 here in the UK, though I've currently seen it for around about £650. And it feels a lot more premium than the majority of laptops, and it's still remarkably thin, but not so thin that we lose out on all the ports that we pretty much rely on for our day-to-day use. So, is the Swift 5 actually any good, and should you buy it? Well, let's start by taking a look at the design, shall we? And personally, I think it looks pretty good. It definitely looks more premium laptop computer than a lot of Acer's other laptops. And yes, it can't really compete with the highest end notebooks, so the Dell XPS and then the MacBooks, but realistically for £700 I don't really think you could ask for much more. It's a very small machine as well. The screen size takes up the majority of the top panel. The bezels are very thin. You've got a webcam at the top rather than at the bottom like you'll find on some of its competition, and it's very lightweight as well. It's around about 1.3 kilograms, so it's very portable and it's not going to break your back every time you want to take it around with you. Now looking on the inside, we have the display, which is an IPS display, and it's got very rich colours, very wide viewing angles, and is probably one of the best things about this laptop. Now, when I first looked at it, I was actually at an Acer event a couple of weeks ago, and I said to them, oh, it's a touchscreen, is it? Because it has that classic glossy look that you get from touchscreens. But unfortunately it's not, which isn't necessarily a missed opportunity, but the choice to go with a glossy screen and not have it as a touchscreen, I get why it's done from a price point of view, but it doesn't necessarily make sense. I'd rather that they'd used a matte display here rather than a glossy display. But otherwise there's not really that much to fault. It's a 1080p IPS display and it looks great. The rest of the laptop, well, you've got a fingerprint sensor, and this is located on the touchpad. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work as well as you would like it to. It's used for Windows Hello, so it's used to log into your laptop computer, and to be honest, it's more or less 60-40 in terms of the amount of time it gets it right, which is very annoying, and it means that I pretty much need to use my pin about 40% of the time. So if they had integrated this in a way that was actually going to work all of the time, then it would be a great feature, but here it's almost not really worth using because it doesn't always get it right. The touchpad though, I have to say, is actually pretty damn good. It uses the Windows Precision drivers, which means that Windows sort of recognises it and is more optimised for it. And as a result, you do get a smooth tracking experience, especially when you do the multi-touch gestures. So the main one really that you'll find yourself using is of course scrolling up and down, and it feels really responsive. It's not the best I've ever used, but for a £650, £700 laptop, I don't think anyone is going to complain. The keyboard as well, it's another good thing about the laptop. It's very nice to use. I would say that there's not very much travel here, which is a touch disappointing. You can get used to it, but you don't almost get that much of a register when you've touched a key. So unless you are looking at the screen, then you won't always know if the key has actually registered. The keys are backlit, but the backlight is pretty terrible. It's not that bright and it's really inconsistent. If you look at this from a normal viewing position, then some of the keys look dim, some of them look bright, and it's just a little bit of a disaster really. I don't see why they couldn't actually implement the backlight in a way that was consistent, because it just looks a little bit naff. Otherwise though, the body is fairly rigid. You do have some metal-like finishes, and it does a good job of making the thing sturdy as well. There is some flex to the body, but nowhere near as much from some other competing laptops, so that is very good to see. If you do want to use this laptop for any form of media consumption, then you'll be glad to know that the speakers are actually pretty impressive on the display. They go quite loud, they're very clear, and while the bass isn't that pronounced, it's more than usable for the majority of tasks. If you want to do anything serious though, like listening to some music for extended periods of time, obviously headphones or external speakers are still recommended though. If you do want to use this for listening to music though, it should be noted that there are no media keys on this laptop that can play, pause and skip the songs. I have no idea why they've done this. You've got all the basics covered, like connecting to an external display and sleeping the laptop, why couldn't they put in play, pause and skip buttons? It's something that really annoys me because it's something I use all the time. If I want to quickly do something, it's probably going to be pausing the music or skipping the music. If I do want to go and turn the Wi-Fi off or sleep the laptop, then I'm prepared to put the effort in to do that. Please, Acer, put some more media keys in your future laptops. Moving over to the connectivity side of things though, the port selection is actually pretty good, and I think most people will have what they're after. On the right hand side, you've got the jack for the power socket, then we've got an HDMI socket, a USB 3.0, and then a USB Type-C. This is the thing that I think is a little bit of a missed opportunity, and I'm sure it's done for price reasons, but this isn't a Thunderbolt equipped USB Type-C, and plugging this into a USB-C monitor, I wasn't able to charge the device, and I wasn't able to output any form of display to the monitor either. So this is probably unlikely to affect most people, but it may be something that you are considering for maybe upgrading to a different monitor later down the line. On the left side of the device though, we've got another USB socket, headphone microphone combo jack, and then we've got an SD slot. So we've not got a huge amount of ports, but to be honest, most people should be fine with the two full-size USB sockets and then that USB-C for future-proofing. So that's all the features of the laptop, but what about its specs and performance? Well, it's got an i5 processor, 8GB of RAM, and then an SSD as well. It does also come in an i7 variant if you need a little bit more horsepower, but the i7 7200U that I've got here is still hyper-threaded, and it's going to be more than enough for what most people are going to be using this thing for, which is pretty much media consumption, emails, and then maybe some image editing. If you want to step up to video editing, then I would advise looking at a more powerful laptop that features a quad-core processor. As well, this will probably cope absolutely fine with 1080p footage. 4K is not really going to be something that this laptop is going to be able to handle. And for day-to-day performance, there's not really any problems here. It didn't stutter once in my use, but it should be noted that my use was mainly really just the general use, so maybe web, video watching, YouTube, and then doing some work. I didn't try to do anything too hardcore, but I did try and boot up some games, but of course this only has Intel HD graphics, so a gaming laptop this certainly isn't. Rise of the Tomb Raider, I tried booting up in DirectX 12 and it sort of crashed. Then I switched to DirectX 11, 720p, and on the lowest preset we got around 16, 17 frames a second average. So you're not going to be playing any hardcore games on this machine, but lighter titles like Rocket League play surprisingly well, and I was able to achieve around about 37 frames a second average, which felt a lot smoother than I was expecting. But of course, when you start playing games with controllers, then you don't really need such a high frame rate anyway. So if that is you and you're someone that wants to play light titles, then it's absolutely fine. But if you do want something that's pretty much good for gaming, then maybe look at something like the Dell XPS or a dedicated gaming laptop. Then finally, the last few things to mention are the fact that this uses a SSD, but it is limited by the SATA interface. It's not a NVMe drive, so you can expect read-write speeds of around about 540, 530 megabytes a second respectively. So it's not the fastest out there, but for most people, I really don't think you'd even notice. And then we've got a new generation of Wi-Fi, so it supports multiple antenna, so it's MIMO, I think it's multiple input, multiple output. There's not really many routers that support this, but it's a nice feature to have. And then finally, of course, we should talk about battery life, which it says you're going to get 13 hours, which would be fantastic, wouldn't it? But realistically, I was getting around about 6.5 at 50% screen brightness. I'm sure if you were a little bit more cautious about your battery life, you could probably get around 7, 7.5, maybe 8. But in my testing, yeah, it was around about 6.5. So it should pretty much last most people throughout the day. Charging is very quick as well. The charger is very small, but if you do want something to last 10 hours, then this isn't necessarily gonna do that. And there we have it, the Acer Swift 5. It's a laptop that I've really enjoyed using. It strikes a very good balance between price and performance. It's very small, it's got a fantastic display, and the keyboard and trackpad are of reasonable quality that I don't think anyone will have too many complaints about. I just wish that the keyboard backlighting was slightly better, that there were media keys and that the fingerprint sensor did actually read your fingerprint all of the time, because it's just a little bit annoying in its current state. It's also worth noting that the build quality, while it's good, you do get a lot of marks on the laptop and it is something you'll have to clean fairly often. But I think it's something that most people would be very pleased to own, which is why it wins the top purchase award. What do you think? Let me know. Do you like the Swift 5? Do you think it's the sort of thing you'd be interested in, or is it not what you'd be interested in at all? Let me know down in the comments section below. A massive thank you to Acer for supplying this review unit. Subscribe for more videos just like this. I'll leave the link to the Swift 5 down in the description below if you want some more information. And yeah, like this video if you liked it, dislike if you didn't. Check out some more laptop reviews over here, and I'll see you in the next one. So this is a 14-inch laptop that comes in a more... oh, I lost my words.